Alright fellas, after having the boat for a few months, I have a couple of gripes or complaints. Probably my number one complaint is the drain plug. This has coarse threading on it, and it can be difficult to get it lined up correctly and seated correctly. Now, what I have figured out is this has to be at the 10 and 4 o'clock position for it to be seated correctly. Okay, it can't be at the 9 and 3. It has to be, oh, cut myself. I didn't know. So it's a pain in the butt to get it lined up correctly, but once you do, make sure that, see, there it is. And that's at the 9 and 3. Believe it or not, I don't think that's incorrectly. It's gotta be a little bit past the 9 and 3 mark in order for this thing to be seated correctly. But that's one of my gripes is this plug, guys. It's kind of like a pain in the butt, man. Another thing is when you first get your boat, be very careful of any shavings of carpet and aluminum that will filter out through this little drain plug, because they don't clean the inside of these holes out during the fabrication process, I don't think, because I also found out the little round cutout of aluminum they use to drill to set this drain plug in on the inside of the boat. I reached back down in there and found that little aluminum circle that they cut out for this drain plug. Also, a lot of the carpet shavings would when I would drain this plug, would be coming out through this to the drain plug. You know, a ball of carpet fur and small aluminum shaving. So be very careful, guys, when you first get the boat. Make sure you double check that. And another, I found out the hard way. I went out to a lake in the morning, and then went out to another lake. I didn't lower the motor overnight, and when I got to the second lake that I was going to that same day, they told me to lower the motor, and a small amount of water came out at the prop, and they would not allow me on the lake in the afternoon. I went out to Lake Elsinore in the morning, Paris Lake in the afternoon, and the ranger would not let me on because water came out of the prop and cross-contamination and whatnot, wada. So just a word of advice, guys. Another complaint I had about this boat is all these latches would spin freely and they wouldn't lock properly. So I had to tighten these on the inside. I had to tighten all these on all the door latches, and I'm talking about all of them, guys, because they were loose. They would just spin around. They wouldn't lock correctly. So I had to tighten these up with a pipe wrench, because I didn't have a crescent wrench or a wrench big enough, so I just used a pipe wrench. But that was one of my complaints. I can't believe that it would come from the factory like that. This one was also loose and spin around. The ignition switch assembly would also spin around. This thing would just turn around freely, and but I got that tightened up too. Another problem that recently surfaced was my trolling motor quit working on me, and you know, I couldn't figure out what it was. I thought maybe I didn't charge it correctly, but that turns out that that's not the case. I took it out on the lake, and I ran it for about 3 hours, no problem. I come back home, put it on the charger, I test the trolling motor, nothing at all, man. So I started disassembling it and going through the wiring harnesses. I moved one of the wiring harness. I tried it, and it turned on, so I guess it's got to be in the harness. And sure enough, at this little connector right here, these little terminals were loose. The nuts on both of these were almost completely off. They were at the top of these little bolts right here. If it wouldn't be for this little plastic cover, they would pop off. They would definitely kept come off. So I've gone ahead and I've tightened them, tested the motor, and she's working. Well, I turned off the power switch in the back. But that was it. That was the problem. So let's get that closed up, and we'll get her all buttoned up. But those are my complaints so far, guys. Other than that, she's been a good boat, man. You know, but for being a new boat and the amount of money that you pay for these things, I know they're minimal issues, but you know, I don't think that a boat should be allowed to leave unless somebody's gone over the boat thoroughly. And unfortunately, when I got it, I didn't go over the boat thoroughly. I was first time owner, first time boat purchase, you know, just excited about getting it. And I was paying more attention about the do's and don'ts of being on the water and how to operate it and how to, you know, drive it and whatnot. And so I overlooked all the little stuff. But just a word of advice, guys. All right? Hope this helps if any of you guys are having any issues. Thanks for watching. Tight lines.